YouTube, welcome back. It's DubDigital, and today I have a very special guest to the channel. I'm talking to Josiah Spackman, aka Chillin' Science. How you doing, man?
Thank you so much for having me, man. It's great to be here on the show. Really appreciate you taking the time to have a chat with us today.
Hey, anytime, love it. So, just a little bit about Josiah. He's a Digibyte Foundation member and also Chief Fund Officer at Digibyte Inc., which is a very interesting title, man, I gotta say. Can you tell us a little bit about that? What's the function of the Chief Fund Officer? It's got to be.
Yeah, so many people were taking things so seriously, and we were getting a ton of messages, especially all the way back in 2017, going, "Hey, we really need to hear about all of these people that are on your company and things like that, because Digibyte's not an ICO, so we don't have a great big company of founders and advisors and consultants and all of that kind of good stuff." So, yeah, it's just kind of being a little bit cheeky about the fact that there is no permission required. It is implied. If you want to go do something for Digibyte, you go do it.
Cool. So it's an ode to the, I guess, the nature of Digibyte, right? As being permissionless organization. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, exactly. And that's really like undervalued by a lot of people. They were like, "Oh, we need somebody who's launched 10 projects before and only one of them was a rug pull." No, I'd rather something that didn't require every single person had some great big portfolio that they were able to show off on LinkedIn. Like, who cares about LinkedIn these days, man?
Thanks for taking the time to talk with me today. I think we have a lot of Digibyte people in the community and at my channel. And just want to dig in a little bit high level and then go in a little deeper. So just for the people, well, actually, I guess before we jump into that, I'd like to learn a little bit more about you. And so I call this the Genesis story of you. How did you get into blockchain and how did you get involved with the Digibyte Foundation?
Yeah, so a friend of mine, he sent me a message back in, man, it must have been 2013. And he basically, like, he says to me, he's like, "Look, you can print money with your computer." And I'm like, "Really? I can print money with my computer?" He's like, "Yeah, you just got to sign up and do this Bitcoin stuff." All right, cool. So anyway, I managed to convince my ex-wife back then to let me go out and buy a couple of high-end graphics cards, fire them up, start mining away. And I found Bitcoin. I started mining, but I got kind of like disheartened because I was going for, I think, like 3 days worth of mining, and I only managed to mine 0.1 Bitcoin because ASICs had just showed up. Now, if you look at it today, you'd go, "Wow, 0.1 Bitcoin in 3 days, that's amazing." But it was costing me like 3 or 4 times that much in electricity. So started having a bit of a hunt around. I found Bitcoin talk forums, and I'm like, I'm a smart guy. I found Litecoin. I was like, it's faster. There's a higher maximum supply. Like, yes, I'm onto a winner here. Started mining that for another week or two, and then I found Digibyte was doing something with Dogecoin back in the day for the Washington mudslide victims. They'd just gone and done their first protocol upgrade as well with DigiShield. And I'm like, again, I'm a smart guy. I think I've found something with faster blocks and better maximum supply. So I'll look into that more. And sure enough, here we are 7 years later. So
awesome. Yeah, I mean, I think everyone has somewhat of at least earlier on, has a similar story, right? Same with me. I got into it from a coding friend of mine approached me and said, "Hey, there's this thing called Bitcoin." And I wasn't from the technical side, but more of the economic side with the hard money kind of thing. I understood that a little more, dug deep into it. And then, once you get into Bitcoin, you just kind of start looking around. And I found Digibyte actually a little later in 2017. Nice. But again, similar kind of, decentralized nature really appealed to the libertarian in me. So awesome, man. Good to hear about that.
Yeah, and the rabbit hole, once you just start falling down it like Alice in Wonderland, like it's incredible. And that permissionless nature, I think a lot of people, it really appeals to them when they fully grasp it. And for me, it actually was something that it took a Bitcoin Cash CEO to explain. And I saw a video, they were on television in somewhere in Europe, I believe. And he basically said, "Yeah, I've just decided that I'm the CEO." And I was like, "Wow, you're the CEO. That's amazing." To just wake up one morning and decide. Yeah, just like absolutely, my mind was blown by it. Yeah. Anyway, it took a little bit longer to kind of, again, like you say, fully grasp it. It takes a little bit to kind of understand that. And we still have people that will jump into our Telegram channels and things and go, "Hey, do you mind?" It's like, yeah, like the permission is implied. You go for it. You do whatever you want.
Well, cool. Yeah, so just for because I have an eclectic channel, a lot of people from different chains on here. For the person who's not familiar with Digibyte, can you walk us through it a little bit? give us a quick rundown of what you think are the high points of the project and what really speaks to you?
Okay, so comparing Digibyte with the likes of Bitcoin, for example, we've got 1,000-to-1 ratio of our maximum supply. The idea being that it's going to be a little bit smaller, a little bit more divvied up, and that you could use it a lot easier to pay for a coffee, that kind of thing. We want everybody in the world to be able to have a Digibyte or 0.1 of a Digibyte. You know, as things go on, that extra maximum supply we think is quite important. Mm-hmm. In addition, Digibyte has not released the first version and kind of just sat on our hands and gone, yeah, we're good, we're done, we're out. We've had a lot of consistent upgrades over the years, starting all the way back in 2014, 6 or 8 weeks after the first, after we first launched, we brought out DigiShield, which is now in use in a dozen other blockchains around the world today. And it's that kind of consistent development which has also led us to then upgrade to a multi-algorithm. So instead of just having the one algorithm which is valid on ASICs, like with Bitcoin or with Litecoin, we have multiple algorithms, and we are currently working to, again, replace some of those with ones for CPU and GPU mining. So if you have a laptop at home, you've got your cell phone even potentially in the future, you might be able to take your phone and just kind of pop it on your bedside table at night, plug it into the charger, and then wake up in the morning. You have a little bit more Bitcoin there. Well, sorry, Digibyte. Mm-hmm. It's early in the morning here. I'm terribly sorry. Real bad slip of the tongue there, but that's all right. So one of the other things, though, that we've focused on is community. And as a result of things like our faster block timings and our more economical transaction fees and things like that, we've been able to appeal to a lot of other places where, for example, you can't spend Bitcoin. Because if you happen to be, let's say you're in a nation and you work for like $3, $5, $10 a day, that's not really going to work out for you if you have a $20 transaction fee. Like, no one's going to buy groceries. You can't do it. It's just impossible. But what is possible is something like Digibyte, where you could do 100 transactions for less than a cent. And so we've kind of taken that and we've done not only some philanthropical work, but we've also done a lot of internationalization and translations of our mobile applications, so that if you happen to be firing it up for the first time and you are in a school in Venezuela, it will be in your native language, so that you're not having to stare at a screen and kind of go, oh, I think that means send, or does it mean cancel? And, you know, that kind of thing is actually really, really important for adoption, that sort of thing, where it is in somebody's native language. So we're in, I believe, 50 plus languages, supporting 180 odd different countries. So yeah, it's pretty cool. Pretty excited about that. I'm looking forward to doing more with that in the future as well.
Awesome. And not just decentralized from a cultural standpoint, but one of the high points I think about Digibyte is the 5 mining algorithms. Yeah. So decentralized in mining in general, right? To prevent centralization of mining effort, which is becoming more and more of a prominent issue nowadays.
Well, especially with what we've just seen with what's been going on in China. You're absolutely right. Yeah. 70%, I think, is in the one country. And so if we're able to incentivize more people to participate, because that's the problem. So if somebody watching this thinks, you know what, I'd like to start mining me some Bitcoin, I'd like to start mining me some Litecoin, there is a $1,000, $2,000 barrier to entry before they can actually start doing it. You've kind of got like this elite boys club, if you will, you know, and that's sure, it's great because that provides the most security for Bitcoin. But on the other hand, all of the newly minted Bitcoins are mostly going to these fewer people. And so we need better ways of distributing it to people who can't afford to go through like KYC on an exchange, or who can't afford to purchase a super expensive ASIC. And so having CPU and GPU mining on your computer, where you can fire up a piece of software, click the button, and that's it. It just mines for you. You get freshly minted Digibytes. You've never had to go anywhere, for example, to an exchange to buy them. They've never been used anywhere else. There's no KYC that might be associated with that aspect of the blockchain. They are purely anonymous, gone straight to you. And I think that's really cool and really, really valuable in terms of allowing people to participate. So yeah, if you're looking at home and you're going, oh, I'd love to participate, this is what we're working towards again with Digibyte. We've had it in the past, looking to bring that back.
Yeah, and I mean, just right away, you've already kind of touched on the main sticking points for Bitcoin and Ethereum right away, right? Number one, transaction fees. It's not doable and feasible in certain areas of the world where cost of living is way lower, so transaction value means a lot more. And then
Yeah.
Ethereum, everyone knows about the gas problem. We don't even talk about that. So like no one likes paying a whole bunch of gas, and no one likes paying, transaction fees. Ethereum is probably the worst offender. They keep saying they're going to fix it. I'm growing old, waiting for it. No offense to,
Well, you've been around since
Ethereum.
2017, right? You've heard back in the day, we're going, yeah, Lightning is just around the corner. It's going to fix it. And Ethereum's going, yeah, we're going to do staking and sharding in 2017, 2018. And
well, like I've actually been around since 2013. 2013. And it wasn't a problem back then because most people were hodling Bitcoin.
Yeah.
So it wasn't really transacting too much. But when they started moving it, as it scales, it really doesn't really adequately address that gas and transaction fee, Bitcoin and Ethereum. So that's where I think Digibyte's trying to slot itself to be an actual real life usable currency, which is definitely needed in the world today, especially in Venezuela and hyperinflation countries. So
yeah, exactly. And you were talking to the whole libertarian aspect before. You said you quite like that. And I think as well, if we look at something where you are more in control of that yourself, and you're also, you've got that control and that certainty around the supply, as well as better certainty around the transaction fees. I think that's onto something there.
Well, hey, and just to spin off that really quickly, just so you guys know, if you don't, Digibyte this year hit its 7th birthday, which is pretty substantial in my opinion. Yeah. Woo. It's pretty.
There's not a lot of projects that have been around that long, right? And
No.
Actually, I think since 2014, Digibyte is one of 6 projects that's remained in the top 100 on the CoinMarketCap the whole entire time. So
yeah, that means a lot because more and more coins enter the realm of existence every day. So they're always vying to knock people out of that top 100, and Digibyte's had staying power there, which means a lot. But just to go into it a little bit more, 7 years is a long time for a chain because as it exists, the network grows. And I keep harping to my community that blockchains are valued as a network effect, right? Not necessarily like a 30-year equity, like I think a lot of people try to slot it into. But the more people in the network, the more valuable the network because more people can transact within that network. So 7 years, Digibyte's been building and has a very, very active community. Probably one of the most active and most enthusiastic that I've seen. So definitely shout out to the Digibyte community for that.
They get fired up, right?
They do. I love it. I love the passion. I love the enthusiasm. But if you don't mind, would you think I could share a video? This is showing all the people that contributed to the code base of Digibyte for the 7 years. That gets me going, man. That's damn near emotional. Holy, but it really goes to show you guys that it hasn't been what you would call a ghost chain. There's been people behind this thing the whole time, building it out, and it's a decentralized effort, permissionless effort. Very, very impressive. So hats off to Digibyte, 7 years old. That means a lot. Congrats.
So what would you like to see then? If we were hypothetically, we're looking back over the last 7 years now, what would you like to see for the next 7 years for Digibyte?
See, I think for the next 7 years of Digibyte, I think Digibyte has a great foundation, right? But now is the application being built on it. And the one thing I love about Digibyte, guys, if you don't know, is Digibyte is open source too, and has not just built its own technology, but helped other projects implement similar technologies. You mentioned Dogecoin, right? However,
we've had one that's literally rebased off of our multi-algo and multi-shield. What was the name of it? It was that one that I think it was a country in Europe actually like airdropped to half of their population. They used most of the Digibyte code base.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
I didn't
I
know that.
was. I'll find the project name, and we can leave it down
Okay.
below for people to have a nosy at. But yeah. Sorry, you were saying.
Yeah, like I like the technologies being built in Digibyte. I think the one thing missing, and not a dig at all, it's just this is a good problem, in my opinion. It's always good to have the substance and then expand out. I think DigiID is a game changer in terms of password management.
Oh.
If you're familiar with any password management at all, that's a huge problem. A lot of the password managers are centralized. Digibyte is the only real blockchain I know addressing this. So technology such as that brings Digibyte to the, I guess you would say, the consumer subconscious, right?
Yep.
And one of the products is built on DigiID is Atom ID.
Yep.
And that's been integrated in most of the main browsers, Chrome, Edge. Is it Brave? Is it in Brave?
Yeah.
Okay, Brave. So like more stuff like that. And I think I guess the precipice or the jumping off point that I see is going to be just blow Digibyte up into the awareness is DigiAssets. I think that is a good segue into, usability to scalability, kind of like a utility layer on top of Digibyte.
Yep.
Right. So we all know Digibyte as a currency, but it can be so much more than that. And I think that's something that not a lot of the blockchain ecosystem is aware of. So
yeah,
I think expanding things like that, developing products for that, I think will help it gain a lot more traction.
So kind of, I guess I want to talk a little bit about DigiAssets, obviously, but if you were to look at something like DigiID, where there is no cost to it, what would you say? Like, do you think that that's a benefit that there's no cost and there's nothing that's hitting the chain as such and there's no barrier to entry? Or would you say that it's better to have something that utilizes the chain where people are putting in money and it's going to somebody else and you're stirring up those transactions and generating a fee market? What do you reckon?
Well, I guess from a price appreciation standpoint for like Digibyte holders, obviously like a fee transaction of some sort would benefit that.
Yeah.
It's all about what you're going for, right? If you're really going for a usable technology, I guess free would be the thing, but selfishly, I would say a fee mechanism of some sort. Doesn't have to be gouging people. It would definitely rise the price of DGB.
This is kind of like a two-pronged approach here, because the first one is DigiID. No cost, nothing hidden in the chain at all. It's built into your wallet. It's even in the Coinomi wallet. We've got additional third-party authenticators. So if you've got the Coinomi wallet, you can use DigiID. We've got websites like createDigiAssets.com where you can go and you can try DigiID and sign up. And there's no passwords, there's no legacy email. It doesn't ask for any of that kind of thing. It just asks for a display name. That's it. Nothing more.
Wow.
So super cool. You can give that a try. And again, it's free, which is awesome. So the flip side is DigiAssets. And I'm glad that you really mentioned that, because if you were to picture, right, like an Ed Sheeran concert, for example, how many people would go to something like that? Like 100,000 people showing up at a concert, 50,000 people. Now, if you can imagine you are Ticketmaster or whoever, and you are issuing tickets to 50,000 people, and you're trying to do that on the Ethereum network, 50,000 transactions being sent out, or at least one transaction with 50,000 different outputs, right? Like, that's going to cost them so much money. It's ridiculous. It's just completely impossible. But if you the combination of Digibyte with DigiAssets and DigiID, you can do a whole bunch of really nifty stuff. So you could show up at the stadium, for example, and you hold your phone up and you scan the DigiAsset and you authenticate basically with DigiID. So you don't have to then send your DigiAsset anywhere, your ticket, effectively, to get into the stadium. You've received it from Ticketmaster. It doesn't cost you anything to utilize it, but we've still, like, we're lowering that barrier to entry there. So kind of feeling like we're hitting down the best of both worlds in that aspect.
Well, because you have to it's a fine line always, right? Like, you have to make it come back to the coin holders, but also be usable, like in the real world. Because no one's going to adopt a solution that just takes all your money off of one concert, as you phrased it. If you use it on Ethereum, definitely not scalable to that extent. Like, I was reading around the internet, and I know some of it is like just speculation and all that, but have you heard some hinting in regards to the European Union looking at DigiID at all? I mean, you can answer that or not answer that if you no.
I've heard the same rumors, let's put it that way. And I think it kind of makes a lot of sense. I love, though, again, this comes back to the permissionless being like both a blessing and a curse, because there's nothing stopping anybody. So back in the day, I had a gentleman from my church who was talking with me, and we're having a really good chat about Digibyte, and he just casually, offhandedly mentioned, he's like, yeah, we've been using it in our enterprise product now for the last like 2 or 3 months. And I was like,
wow.
What? Why didn't
Wow.
you mention it? He's like, well, I didn't have to. And that was kind of the beauty of it, is we've got it and we're storing these hashes on a blockchain, and we didn't have to ask anybody for permission. And it's cost effective and it's fast. We get that confirmation so quickly. Like, it blew my mind, because yeah, I didn't have to know about it. Nobody had to know about it, but they're doing it. It's only because we were having a good conversation. He kind of just brought it up. He's like, yeah, we're doing it. We're using Digibyte. I was like, that is so cool. They don't have to tell us if they're using it. I think that's kind of yeah.
But when I look at Digibyte, I see very permissionless, decentralized, true to the real crypto ethos. And that's something I kind of, am right or wrong, slot that for more of a public utility in a sense, right? Because I do believe that, I guess you would say, private blockchains connect up to public blockchains. I would be slotting Digibyte more as a public, because it is so permissionless.
Yeah.
And when you think about that, it's kind of like there's so much utility that could be had, so much use case. And like you said, we don't even really know who's completely building or using the technology.
I kind of, again, though, that whole public utility, it reminds me of some of the discussions that were going on around like certain countries about the internet a public utility, and trying to redefine that kind of thing, and they enact legislation around it. You can't really legislate Digibyte. I mean, even coming back to we mentioned this before with the miners and things in China. A bunch of them are shut down. The block timings have skyrocketed on Bitcoin to an average of like 15, 16 minutes or something. It's taking forever to send your transaction through, which then pushes out the difficulty retarget time, because it's no longer 2 weeks, but 3 weeks. And you get the picture. But yeah, if we look at Digibyte, it doesn't matter if one particular nation goes, no, we're going to up and just like firewall everything and just block it. So what? We're not going to be affected by that same kind of difficulty retargeting, because we've got all of our other algorithms carrying on, working away, and that difficulty for SHA-256 would drop pretty quickly, and instead we're going to carry on just fine, and it'll obtain an equilibrium within a couple minutes, and the other the other algorithms will just pick up the slack, really.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's something really important about that staying power, and about these things that we've looked at in the past and gone, can we improve upon this? Can we do this better? And over the last 7 years, I think, yeah, we've actually really proven that. And it provides, like you were talking about before, about a really solid base foundation for other people to build on top of as a public utility.
Yeah. And it because it's useful. It truly is useful, and it has so much more efficiencies that address like historically big sticking points for organizations, right? Implementation of blockchain, and I've been saying this because I come from like white collar world, worked in aerospace and defense industry.
Nice.
There's so much waste in those organizations that they can just turn to blockchain for now. You know what I'm saying? And especially with Digibyte, like DigiID, I just keep bringing it back. I think that's one of the technologies I'm most excited for, because I know it's such a problem. I was doing some digging as I'm trying to decentralize my life right now, and like just find kind of decentralized solutions. And one of them was a password manager, and I just couldn't find why I would get a centralized password manager. You know, if it can be hacked, that kind of defeats the purpose of a password manager. And that's one of the reasons, like, hey, Digibyte's the only one really doing this right now. So like, I just see that it's just a matter of time before one of these technologies catches on and people really realize what's going on over there at DGB. Yeah.
And I think that's a really great point, is why would you go buy something and pay a lot of money for something when you're kind of just handing over your responsibility to somebody else? And we've seen that actually in the past with certain other password managers. They have been breached. They're centralized, effectively, databases we're breached. Whereas if you have a decentralized solution with DigiID and with Atom ID, there's no central database where it's all stored. Every single time it deterministically generates that same password, and it's incredible.
And another part I wanted to talk about that I don't think a lot of people understand about Digibyte is like the way the supply gets reduced. Usually typically, at least in the blockchain ecosystem, people know about the Bitcoin halvings, and every 4 years the supply gets reduced. Digibyte's a little bit different in terms of it gets reduced per month.
Correct.
Right. And I don't know if from an econ standpoint, I don't think people really realize how scarce Digibyte's getting every single month. It's kind of very flies quickly under the radar very quickly. You kind of have a mini halving each month. It's not like
every month.
But yeah.
Well, because people especially I've seen like photos in the States, they'll get together and they'll throw parties in a bar and thing for the Bitcoin halving event. And they're like, yes, it's halved again. Look at us. Like, that's cool and all, but it took you 4 years to get there. And you see all these wild fluctuations. I mean, especially if you look at Litecoin's one, was it last year? Year before? I don't remember exactly.
Yeah, I think so.
The kind of the price, like, just fluctuations were ridiculous as a result of that. It's incredible. And so they also had some fun with their mining hash rate, which caused Coinbase to then subsequently go, you know what, we need to increase the amount of confirmations required before we'll, allow your deposit. I think having 1% per month, like just slowly chipping away at it, like you say, it makes a lot more sense, but it really just flies under the radar. It doesn't need to be a really big, like, yes, we're celebrating in a pub. I mean, it's cool that they can, good on them, and yay, congratulations, it still carries on working after all this time, but at the same time, it's like, why? What do you gain out of having a really, really big event? And could it be improved upon? Could it be better? Is 1% a month, like, reduction, taking it off better? I think so, yeah.
Yeah, and from an investment standpoint, it's the halving's kind of like this press event, that people anticipate for, but the price runs up, it gets dumped. 1% a month, there's no real event being publicized except people who understand what that means until a point in time comes where Digibyte just is very scarce, and it won't be in the news, it won't be on the headlines, it will just be, so. Guys, that's very important to understand that supply is continually getting constricted. Slowly,
what do we have for our supply at the moment? Let's have a quick look, because we've got DigiStats here, so I can even... Well, I'll tell you what, I'll flick you this link and you can bring it up. It's kind of cool. I like the site. Let me hit this button here. Right, so you can see here, so this is the supply. And again, it's obviously like I've got the graph underneath that is boringly just going up sort of thing. That's cool. That's what we want. But you can see, so we're currently at 14.5 billion out of our 21 billion, and the remaining, so what are we at, 6 billion basically is going to take another 14 years. So that kind of that curve is now trailing off. The inflation is slowing down pretty quickly. So the last one will be mined in 2035, 21 billion of them all.
Yeah, guys, and Digibyte's a hard cap supply. Higher supply than a Bitcoin or a Litecoin, still hard cap, right? Because tokenomics are important in terms of if you care about the value of the coin rising in the future. Yes, it will. As supply contracts, I don't see demand for crypto stopping anytime soon. Unless you do, Josiah. I don't know.
No, especially not with the rate that we're seeing money around the world being printed. Like, it is what it is. Like, why not? Sure. So there's definitely inflation when it comes to cryptocurrencies and things like that, especially if you look at Bitcoin and Digibyte. There is inflation. That's the block reward. Yeah. But that's how we get that circulation fairly into effectively the marketplace. Is the miners have to pay for power, and in order to recoup the cost of that power, they can't hold on to it forever, and so it creates this open market where you can buy and sell it for whatever somebody is going to deem a fair and reasonable price at that time. And I think that's a really important way of distributing Digibyte.
Over a long term, fairly, in a distributed manner, just as it's better for the health of the chain.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely been some interesting things over the years. We've seen like using a capture to airdrop things. We've seen people having to go to a faucet. We've seen people doing. To be honest, I can't actually think of any of them. I know there's been a bunch of wild ones over the years. People having to pay Ethereum to a contract address to get more tokens. You know, like. But I think that in terms of like the most fair way of doing this, I think that proof of work is not perfect, but I think it's pretty close. And I feel like once we end up getting GPU or CPU mining back into Digibyte, again, that's going to remove that big barrier to entry that we were talking about before, and will be even more fair than it is now.
Yeah, and you know, you talked about earlier, just to jump back a little bit, you talked about how legislation is kind of impossible because of the finite mining algorithms, right? Because if something happened with ASICs or whatever, you just switch on over. It's the resiliency that I think is integral to cryptocurrency. Because I'm from 2013, and I have to remind myself that not everyone has the same understanding of what crypto actually is and was made to be, right? Alternative to the banking system, right? And most people are saying, you know, crypto is going to be regulated and it's not sanctioned by so on and so forth. Well, guys, it never really was meant to do that. You know, it was meant to be a real life alternative to opt out of an inflationary monetary supply.
Yeah.
You know, so any chain that's able to show resiliency in the face of adverse regulators, that's something that should be not taken lightly in my mind.
And if you've, I mean, as someone who's been around since 2013, 2014, you will have seen that shift from like GPUs to ASICs for Bitcoin. And with that came that centralization. And although that's cool because, like, don't get me wrong, I'm not anti-ASIC by any stretch of the imagination. This is how the blockchain derives its security, is from having more people, faster hashes, securing the network. But we saw the likes of the Antminer Antbleed vulnerability. And if you've got a lot of your hashing power, for example, just centered around that one particular ASIC manufacturer or ASIC vendor, if there is an issue, like, for example, with this Antbleed backdoor, and if they were able to remotely shut them down or remotely change where the hash power went, all of those kind of things, yeah, it becomes pretty important that you have not just a decentralization of where the mining is physically located, but also of the hardware being used. And so having Digibyte with the 5 different mining algorithms, different mining vendors, different mining hardware profiles, and eventually the GPU and CPU is going to be really important as well, because you'll have people able to be securing it on their home PCs in the event that something were to happen to one of those ASIC algorithms. I think that's super important, coming back to what you were exactly saying, is that decentralization of more than just numbers. Yeah.
For sure. Hey, let's take a turn real quick. So I've actually liked to see Digibyte getting into more and more crypto services. I think recently had crypto.com. I know you can't withdraw Digibyte. I tried to withdraw this morning. But that's positive in terms of adoption. I know that Digibyte's currently working to get onto Celsius Network, which I don't think has happened as of yet, but I know the community's been putting a lot of legwork behind it to make that possibility.
Yep. Big shout out to Crypty Girl for spearheading that. I think she's been awesome.
Yeah. I saw her sharing the petition on Twitter. I actually retweeted that, and at least what I remember, she hit the numbers, right? So it should be,
I think so. Yeah,
pretty soon here. And then what I like to see, and I want to get your thoughts on, is Digibyte's foray into DeFi via RenDGB. And I know they have a liquidity pool in 1inch, and I think also Polygon now, right? So what are your thoughts on that? And do you think that's a value-added step for the maturation of Digibyte and getting more like traction in the marketplace?
It's a tough one. So it's not something that I personally have been highly involved in, that kind of aspect of cryptocurrencies. Decentralized finance, sure, it's appealing to me at a theory level, but I haven't taken a big deep dive into it. But I know that there are a lot of people that are out there that have, and I know that this is really important for a number of people in terms of basically pushing it forward to being something that can be utilized as a currency replacement. allowing you to do things like obtain yields, do loans, all of that kind of fun stuff. And if this is the easiest way for Digibyte to participate in that, then by all means, all power to the people who are, and I think that's fantastic. I think that the DeFi space as a whole is still very, like, immature is the wrong word, but it is still growing. It's still like a little seedling, if you will. You know, it's only and some of those seedlings, you know, you planted them outside, and it's the harsh winter, and it's not going to survive. But some other ones are being taken care of a bit better. They've started to grow a bit more, and I think that as long as people are careful with what they are getting into, yeah, I'm super excited for the additional opportunities that brings. And I think that having people able to spend their Digibyte or use it in whatever way they feel is important to them, that is powerful.
The way I see it is that as far as Digibyte, the technology, maybe it's not setting the world on fire, but Digibyte, the brand, I think it's gaining awareness, right? Because you have to understand, not a lot of people, especially people who came in from the Doge hysteria and stuff, this is just getting the name out there.
Thanks, Elon.
Elon for the win, or whatever, right? Because I take for granted that I know all these chains. It just stored in my mind, burned into my mind. But people who are new to the space, they say, what's a Ren DGB? They go on Google and they check it out. And it ultimately, in an indirect way, brings them to DGB to look into it and explore it. And that's ultimately what you want. I see it more as kind of like an advertisement, right? Because I think you do bring up a good point. DeFi, for more or less, is kind of a nascent industry. It is young, and it's largely unproven. And regulators haven't really talked about what's good, what's bad. So there's always that kind of risk there because it's an opaque kind of industry. But as long as you understand, size your positions accordingly and are okay with some code risk, because I think that's one of the main issues with DeFi platforms is code risk. It is bringing awareness to Digibyte, the brand, which I think will ultimately benefit and bring more people to it.
Yeah. And so I think that's great. I think the more people that know about it, the better. The more that people can do with it, the better. The more control that people have over their own destiny. Again, yeah, cool. All the better for it. But you bring up a good point in that, yeah, it is a very new kind of industry, and that the underlying code is going to be like the sticking point, I suppose, for a lot of people. So, I mean, yeah, for myself, that's why I'm mostly not involved in it, is I'm fine with not taking any risks in that aspect, and I don't feel the immediate need to participate in it. But for other people who are potentially more okay with that, then absolutely all power to them. And I'm so stoked that Digibyte is there for them to be able to use in that kind of a way that they want to. That's ultimately what it's about. Is I do a lot of these other videos and things, and I'm like, yeah, so now Digibyte is on this different exchange that operates out of this other country, and now it's on this other, there's like 6 different wallets. And it's not so much about, yay, there's another one, but it's more about this particular wallet is going to do things slightly differently and give you that little bit of different control, or this particular exchange is better for people in this country, and it's going to allow them easier on-ramps and off-ramps from Digibyte. And that, I think, coming back to is like your self-sovereignty and your ability to be master of your own destiny. And for Digibyte to empower that, I think is so cool.
I'm an interoperability guy, and I just look at it as the leaking of liquidity from other value islands, right?
Yeah.
Like I look at each blockchain as a soloed island. And back in 2017, there was no real way to get it from point A to point B without an exchange. And I don't care what blockchain you're from. I think that's an inherent risk. Whenever you have a centralized entity controlling where you could shove your capital, it's always good to have decentralized solutions that can bleed out of Ethereum into Digibyte. That's essentially what Ren DGB, I think, is starting to do.
Yeah.
So like, right or wrong, anything that brings liquidity into Digibyte ultimately contributes to the value of Digibyte in my mind. So that's cool, man. Just want to get your thoughts on that.
No, of course. And that's interesting because that's what Elon Musk also said, because he was like, I'm just cashing out just a little bit of Bitcoin just to make sure there's the liquidity. Or when he did that with, I think it was Dogecoin or whatever, he put it in his Twitter profile. And then 2 days later, he's like, thanks for the exit liquidity. It is because it is still it's a global marketplace, really. having that little bit of liquidity that you see from other places which have traditionally gotten by with being okay with having less liquidity than we have in the crypto space, anything that can be done to increase that in a, I mean, I again want to give this like kind of safe disclaimer. I think it's going to be broadly beneficial. Let's say you are a company. Again, let's come back to Ticketmaster, and you've gone out and you've purchased a bunch of Digibyte to use so that you can send DigiAssets out to people. Again, we'll come back to the edge sharing thing, and we're sending 50,000 transactions out to people so that they can use these tickets and then keep them on their phones as a memento for all time. I think that if you are doing this in such a way that you've gone and purchased Digibyte and then you're not having to worry about both the transaction fees, or when you go to buy some more again, like in a month's time, the price has gone up, price has gone down, you know, that kind of thing, I think is going to be really beneficial, not just for Digibyte, but for all blockchains in the space as we, you know, start to move past that initial price discovery that we've been in for the last decade.
Right. It seems like it drags on and on, but I guess progress is incremental, right? But speaking on DigiAssets, we touched it a little bit, but I wanted to get your take on what do you think is the killer like asset to be issued on DigiAssets? Is it like deeds? You know, is it what? Well, how do you see it developing and transforming into like what it's supposed to be in the future?
That's a really great question. So for myself, like I love the idea that you can do like a will and testament on it. I love the idea that you can do property deeds and things like that. And even here in New Zealand, we've been looking at ways that we can use blockchain with property deeds to allow a consortium of people to all purchase a property and start to pay that property off and things to allow people to get onto the property ladder, as it were. But what really excites me, now it's cheesy as hell, is trading cards. Like I remember being 5 years old and going to school, and you've got like your X-Men trading cards or your NBA trading cards. And I actually had a conversation with a NBA team all the way back in 2018, I believe it was, at the start of it. Unfortunately, they wanted a little bit of money for this. Wasn't something that, you know, like I don't have $3, $4, $5 million up my sleeve to just kind of throw at a marketing opportunity. But it was great that we were able to have those discussions with them. And if you can imagine like your Michael Jordan card sort of thing, you know, like having that on your phone that you can pull out with your friends and show them and go, yeah, look, I've got this limited edition one. Like trading cards and things like that have very much been making a comeback, I suppose, in the last even 12 to 18 months. And that to me is exciting, that they could be permanent. They could be on a blockchain. You could be sitting there in a basketball game with your favorite team, and you were given one like a card for going to the event, for example, and it's on your phone and that's cool. But then something pops up on the Jumbotron and you've got like 2 minutes to whip out your phone and scan it and redeem that limited edition additional one. And it's maybe just a play that happened like 2 or 3 minutes ago or whatever. They're slam dunking, and then it's got like a quick like clip of one of the other players having a chat and like, yeah, thanks for being here to support us. We love our fans. You know, for that kind of thing to happen, you've got to have a blockchain like Digibyte, which has low fees and things where you can distribute it to people in 50 plus languages and all that kind of thing. So that's what really excites me. The fact that they will be permanent and they're not going to deteriorate or get sun bleached and, you know, that kind of thing.
Well, I'm glad you said that because now I can nerd out, right? Yeah. So, like, I am totally about trading cards. I mean, I used to play Magic the Gathering, which is one of the reasons I kind of heard about crypto early on because of Mt. Gox, right? And then also Pokemon, which is that's making a big comeback right now, huge comeback right now. But I mean, obviously, there's been so many people who had Pokemon cards and lost it, or they got creased, or they got scratched. NFTs kind of addressed that. Right. And I think that's a good, you did.
And the binder's gone. I lost it in a move sometime. I think my ex-wife probably threw it out. I don't know. Right.
Oh no. She killed the Pikachu, man.
Yeah.
No. But yeah, everyone had a binder, right? I walk around school with my little binder and I have my Pokemon cards telling everyone, oh, I'm going to be rich one day with these Pokemon cards. Who would have thought? Right. But collectibles are making such a comeback. And just, it's not Digibyte related, but I think something's very interesting that maybe Digibyte can implement. LaMelo Ball just had an NFT drop. where he has something called a dynamic NFT, where as he scores points and makes steals and assists, the NFT kind of like adds features onto it, making more and more like rare. I think that's so cool. And it's such an untapped concept where it's not has to be limited to the Ethereum blockchain or any chain.
Yeah.
Just the ownership of musicians to an extent, right? The career of them, of players, et cetera, where you really have true buy-in. You're not just caring about the team winning, you're caring about an individual excelling because you have some kind of stake in it, right? So that's a totally untapped area that I think, you know, if Digibyte could do something like that, I think that would be totally awesome.
Well, so that's what really excites me was I made a couple of like demo ones to send out to people, for example. And one of these ones that I sent out basically, so you've in a traditional trading card, it's very just you've got your little like box and person's picture and that's it. But then you can take digital trading cards one step further and actually start including additional things like links in them. So you can include links to someone's bio or Twitter. But then even better is you can actually include video. And so I thought, you know, like what would be super awesome is if you are, for example, like if we're talking about collecting everybody on like the Chicago Bulls, for example, you collect the whole team throughout a season, and then they can airdrop you because you've got the whole set. They can airdrop you an additional one, which is like it's the whole team kind of huddled around, like, yeah, you've gone and you've got the whole set. Thank you for being one of our best supporters. Like that kind of additional thing. You can't do that with a traditional trading card because you can't airdrop it for starters, and second of all, you can't do video.
Yeah, and you can't even guarantee authenticity most of the time.
And that also comes back to like Mt. Gox with them doing reissuances of certain older cards and things like that, and that started to affect the value of certain cards. And I'm sure you're aware of some of the people that go out and they'll mass buy cards just to try and get that sort of future value, but because they're reissuing them, reprinting them, you know, that value tanks because there's now more in circulation, less people want them. To have that certainty of like this asset is a fixed supply asset, you can't reissue it. I think that's super cool.
Because that's the biggest problem, even with fine art, when you think about it, and trading cards or anything collectible physically. It's always the risk of having someone who's very good at making a fake. As time goes on, counterfeiters get better and better. NFTs is like the ultimate prevention of that. So definitely the future in that regard.
Yeah. But what I think is really exciting, like, because you talked about dragging your binder around like at school and things, and I was the same, like, yeah, look, I've got this X-Men card and I loved it. But I think better than that is if you've got your cell phone and you can take them with you, and you can like they're all just contained just in this one little device, and you can have that little showcase when you open it up. That's what I really want to see. I want to showcase, and I want to be able to put like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar right at the top and be like, yes, I've got this particular card, and like show it off, you know, like in your cell phone, and have that authenticity there that you can take with you without having to lug around a big binder underneath your shoulder, you know, like that's what I like the idea of. I like that future, and I like the idea as well that if I want to be, I mean, I'm no longer in primary school, don't get me wrong, but if one day my kids want the ability, right? Like if I grow up, I'll eventually grow up, have kids, and I want them to be able to go to school and be able to trade the cards like we did without having to pay 20, 30, 50 bucks just to make that transaction between each other. Because there's no point doing that if it's like a 50-cent NFT and you've got to pay 20 bucks to send it to your mate. That's ridiculous. No one's going to do that. But if you can do that 100 times over for like 1 or 2 cents, hell yeah.
Well, cool. I mean, I think that's definitely the reason of the rise of NFTs is because it's also a nostalgia thing, but it's also migrating that nostalgia into the digital economy because, you know, the binder is the way of the past. You know, I mean, when you look at it moving forward, kids have screens now. The reason people are paying big money for cards is because we had cards then. So it's just as when they grow up, they're going to value the same thing they had when they were kids because it's nostalgia. So
yeah, right. Definitely. Especially if you're like, man, I was given this particular NFT, and this one I got from my father. Like this is one that I'm never trading. I'm keeping this, like I'm hitting that like lock and don't ever let me send it kind of button, you know, that sort of thing. I think that one day your kids being able to do that and to share in that kind of like emotional connection, it's going to be great. I love the idea of that, and that we can empower that kind of thing with DigiAssets. So cool.
Awesome, man. Hey, just to jump over really quick, I saw, and one of the things I mentioned in one of my videos that I was pretty excited about was integration of Digibyte into ZellaPay, which is the Royal Dubai payments
Yep.
crypto system, right?
Yeah.
Only 5 cryptos, Digibyte being one of them, which really caught my eye there. Do you know anything regarding that and plans integrating Digibyte, or was that just kind of an announcement and we haven't heard much about it after that? I haven't seen too much since that announcement.
That one kind of took me by surprise as well. And again, I guess this comes back to the whole idea of being permissionless. And it's great that they didn't go and, like, honestly, I don't actually know who knew in advance. It's great that maybe the Digibyte awareness team didn't know, or the Digibyte Foundation that I didn't know, the founder didn't know, all that kind of stuff. Like, if you want to do it, go out there and do it. If you want to buy Digibyte, cool. If you want to lose your entire life savings in an unfortunate boating accident, that's on you as well. Like, go for it.
Yeah. I think it's so cool, though, that even though it is, because it's permissionless and it's not really the deal's being facilitated, it's just a testament to the tech.
Yeah.
It's unsolicited, it's open source, actually being picked up and used by multiple entities over the world.
It just works. That's really awesome. It just keeps ticking over and the wheels keep spinning. Yeah, I think that's something that we could do more of is having documentation to encourage people to be able to do that kind of thing when they are looking for it. If you're someone new to the space and you're like, you know what, I think I'm going to go and look into Digibyte. Like, to have more easily and readily accessible information about how you could tie certain things into your online shopping website, or integrating DigiID into your authentication scheme, or, like that kind of thing is, I think we can definitely be doing more. And so that pursuit of more and pursuit of better is not something that we've stopped over the last 7 years. And I don't think we're going to stop over the next 700 years. And I'm excited.
Long ball, right? Long ball always.
Yeah, exactly.
Just opening up really quick. In terms of, I guess, developments on the horizon, anything that you're excited about that we haven't talked about before in this interview?
Yeah, so Schnorr signatures and Taproot sounds kind of boring, but it means that you can squish more transactions into the same size. So we're getting like a 15% savings. There's additional privacy enhancements. Version 8, which is being worked on, we've got additional speed improvements, like huge speed improvements. So instead of it taking on some older PCs like 5 minutes to launch, it'll launch in like 10 seconds. We're doing a bunch of other stuff with DigiAssets and like a suite around it, currently being nicknamed the Digi Suite, so that you can get out there if you are a company or an enthusiast and build that kind of thing a lot easier and integrate it a lot easier and get started a lot easier with better help and better documentation and kind of like a nice launch pad, if you will. Again, we're also looking at algorithm improvements so that you could potentially mine Digibyte from your home PC, or maybe hopefully even in your cell phone. I think that'd be awesome. And also, again, as always, looking at like the security of the network and the ways that we can improve that even further, the ways that we can decentralize even further and distribute it even better. I think that's really important.
A lot of stuff on the horizon. Digibyte team always continually striving for greatness. That's why I like it. Josiah, I really appreciate you coming on the channel. It was a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you so much for having us on your show.
Anytime. If people want to find you on social media, where can they do that?
So best place, if you want to get hold of me, you can find me on Twitter. I'm at DGB_chilling. You can find me on YouTube. If you search for Josiah Digibyte, I'll come up as well. Otherwise, head up the likes of dgbwiki.com. We've got the Digibyte awareness team, Digibyte Foundation, all that kind of good stuff as well. Links are all there on the wiki, which is probably a really good place to, dgbwiki.com.
I appreciate that, man. Yeah, anytime you want to come on the channel or just chop it up, just let me know. But until next time, talk to you later.
Cheers.